Yes, and welcome back. You were watching just now many Hussainis. We are together with this young girl embarking on a journey of realization, exploration when it comes to Muharram and the rituals associated with Muharram. You can see that she is associating herself with the mosque and the many different rituals associated with Muharram and Ashura specifically, and also Arba'in as well. It's a great adventure, and we're very much part of that as well, so we very much look forward to further episodes to see how she gets on. For this part of the show, the Morning Baraka, we're looking into the jurisprudential aspects of Muharram and Safar, and we have a lot to discuss today, so we'll get, I guess, right into it. Who's going to be shedding some light on these issues is Sayyid Mohsin Shah. Very much welcome you onto the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for having me.
How are you?
Again. I'm okay. How are you?
Muharram is going. How's it going?
Can't complain. Can't complain. MashaAllah. Very, very beautiful experience, like always. Inshallah, may Allah accept your amal and your dua, inshallah, in this blessed month.
Over the next two episodes, I think one of the main issues that a lot of Shias and non-Shias are speaking about is the Azadari, the rituals associated with Ashura and Arba'in. So a lot of people have questions as to the permissibility of them. To what extent can we take part in these rituals? What are the different maraja are saying about these rituals? So I think as an introduction, me and Zahra, we kind of agreed in the sense that let's talk about Azadari in general and why it's important to take part in these actions before we kind of look into the different types. So just from your perspective, just give us a bit of a background into what Azadari is and how it's associated with Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Azadari itself is actually anything you do to mourn for Abu Abdullah and to grieve and to commemorate his tragedy. Now, a form of Azadari could be wearing black. A form of Azadari could be crying for Abu Abdullah. A form of Azadari could be going to the majlis to listen, and also partaking in rituals that we have, such as Latmiyat or Matam, Zanjizani, and then also the bloodletting rituals that we have. So we have different types of Azadari, but this all comes under one umbrella of Azadari, which is anything to commemorate and to mourn of the Imam, and especially in the Muharram season, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein.
So where do we draw the line of rituals? So, for instance, subcontinent, South Asia, they do a lot of replicas of shrines, and you know, and some people are very uncomfortable with sort of that element. How would you say, where does the culture sort of aspect comes in? Where's the actual religious aspect?
Our scholars have been quite lenient to say that anything that helps you take your attention and to increase your spirituality and your grieving and your mourning for Abu Abdullah, you may use. So, for example, in different communities have different styles. Some people may make the ta'abut. Some people like to light up candles. Some people would like to recite poetry before the majlis. Some people like to recite, other eulogies in different languages. And also people have their own way and their own versions of commemorating. The line is drawn if there's something which is, I would say, belongs to another religion.
Sure.
I mean, you're not going to see, crosses and crucifixions happening during Muharram to try and remember some sort of, tragedy there. This is not acceptable at all.
But what about sort of like you've got nights of Hazrat Qasim, and then people bring out
the
Henna
candles
trays.
and the henna trays.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so how does this help, or how does this work? What's going on here? Did the Ahlul Bayt ever do something like this? There's a big discussion in regards to Hazrat Qasim, whether he was married on that night or not. There's some that say yes, he was. Some say that he wasn't.
So what are the benefits behind that?
The benefits, I think, the benefit is that this is you honouring, so Hazrat Qasim, Sayyid Qasim, and honouring his mother and her wish for her son to be married. And that a lot of people, they will do this in honor. For example, when it comes to Ali Asghar, Abdullah, in Pakistani community, it's very, very common that they bring out some sort of a cot that swings, and they bring that out in his honor. That you didn't have a cot, on Ashura in Karbala, But if we were there, we would have given you a cot. And people put they go to this cot and they put money in donations. They put their du'as and the hajat through this. And through the shafa'ah, many of them get their du'a.
It's really about intention, isn't it? Because I think you can never look at somebody doing something and say, why are you doing that? And condemning someone. I think it's important to remember we don't know each other's intentions. And what someone may feel in that commemoration is really a personal thing, isn't it? So
I mean, I haven't seen this yet, but I think this will soon take on a trend where we don't see many flowers being given during Muharram time. When someone passes away at funerals, you always see flowers. And will we see this in the future where during Muharram and Ashura people will be giving flowers in order to, you know, commemorate and show their respect for Abu Abdullah? I think this may happen soon.
Tell us about, I mean, the differences between what's cultural and what's actually part of religion. And when I say what is part of religion, what the Imams did and started and carried on, right from the Prophet onwards, what is cultural, what we see today as in from the Iraqis or the Pakistanis or whoever.
So what we have today that originates from the Ahlul Bayt is the majlis, the actual speaking to an audience and then going to the masa'ib. And the first person to do this was Sayyidah Zainab herself. This was when she was released from the courts in Sham, and she gathered everyone that was there to tell them what just happened. She gathered everyone, that the people that were throwing stones in Persia when they were paraded in Sham. She grabbed everyone together, collected them, and she gave a sermon. And then she gave them a sahib, this is what happened in Karbala, this happened and that happened, and this person was killed and that person was killed. And they all, like, you know, they cried and lamented. And this was done for, like, I think a period of a week before they set off to go back to back home. And then she made the decision to go towards Karbala and then back home to Medina. So this was the first ever sort of Husseini ritual and Husseini grieving, and the first ever majlis that we had. After that, Imam Sajjad, whenever Muharram would come, he would invite the poets to come and please recite some verses. He would pay them as well. He would pay them, he'd gather people, he would say, put a partition up, let the ladies sit on one side, let the men sit on another, and please recite some poetry about Karbala and what happened. And they would have the masa'ib there, and they will be crying and weeping. This is what originates from the Ahlul Bayt.
Right. And what we see, so how did the rest of the rituals come about? Bloodletting, latum, for example.
The bloodletting ritual, we have riwayat for this.
No, I'm not asking bloodletting specifically. I'm saying, for example, you're saying that the root, the core of what the Imams did, which is part of religion, is the majlis. And that's where people come together to commemorate the message of the Ahlul Bayt, for example, or the masa'ib of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Added to that, the Imams also included poetry and reading the masa'ib as well. So how did we get to 2018 where there are many different forms of
so the evolution,
the evolution
and the different styles that we have today.
As we mentioned, the Hazrat Qasim, for example, that ritual, or the Abdullah Radhi and that kind of ritual. How did we get to that?
The way we got to that was, number one, was Islam being spread, and also everyone in their culture had their own traditions. For example, in the time of the Imam, was there any sort of majlis in Farsi? Was there any poetry in Farsi about Karbala? It wasn't there at the beginning, but it was introduced that this is how the Arabs do it. You do it in your version, and also from Imam Rada when he was in Mashhad, he introduced, the Farsi style of majlis and also the Farsi style of poetry, and from there it evolved. The beating of the chest. When did this come about? Was there some person was listening to the poetry and the verses hit him, so he had to tap himself, had to hit his chest because the verses touched him so much. And then and you see the evolution happen from there of the chest beating, which alternatively also relates back to feeling the pain of Abu Abdullah. We beat our chest wide to remember the hooves of the horses that were trampled upon the chest of Abu Abdullah.
So what about those people that don't feel that one year? Perhaps they, for whatever reason, they are standing in a gathering, everyone is beating their chest, and perhaps everybody there is feeling something, but they're not. And they're just vacant. Chest beating is mustahab. It's not wajib, it's not mandatory, and everyone has their own version of lamenting and their own version of grieving. Some people they go really, really quiet. Some people are really loud and they scream. Some people rip their clothes. Some people want to just be left alone. So for those people who want to participate and who maybe feel a bit reluctant to participate,
there's no harm, and there's no one's judging you. So in terms of fiqh wise, it is mustahab for you to actually get involved and to lament and to beat your chest and also to cry, but it's not made wajib for that reason only, that it is very, very subjective to different people and how they're feeling at that time and how the masa'ib has affected them, and doesn't make them less or more of a azadar or less or more connected with Abu Abdullah.
So there's actually a hadith from Imam Sadiq, correct me if I'm wrong, which mentions that every type of mourning outside of the rituals of Imam Hussein, so every type of mourning, be it a death of your family relative or friend, is makruh.
Yes.
Unless it's mourning for Imam Hussein.
That's correct.
Can you shed light on that?
There is a riwayah.
This is very pertinent to the rituals of Imam Hussein.
There is a riwayah that all forms of mourning are actually quite makruh.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, there's also a hadith that if you were to know the reality of Abu Abdullah and what happened in Karbala, you would die of grief.
Yeah.
And there's this thing that grief is so strong and that can actually possess a person's heart, and it could take him into deep depression where they won't be able to even escape. I have friends, unfortunately, who lost their loved ones at a very, very young age. I'm talking about their parents, and it has affected them dramatically, that they have this
they can't function.
Numbness in their heart and this lack of emotion because something so dear to them has been taken away. They haven't actually recovered from it. So this is why Islam has said that, listen, there is a limit to your grieving. But for Abu Abdullah, there is no limit.
Before you get onto that, it's actually very interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say or Imam Sadiq doesn't say it's haram.
Yes.
Because obviously he understands that human beings have emotions.
Indeed.
And we sometimes can't control those emotions. So yes, if you want to mourn for your loved ones, like like in the first 40 days, whatever, it's fine. But after that, it's still makruh, but it doesn't say it's haram. Unless you got for Imam Hussein as you were saying, it's absolutely okay.
Any form of grieving, especially crying. And the reason for this is because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi used to cry over Imam Hussein. When Imam Hussein was born, the angel Jibreel came down and explained to Rasulullah what was to happen, and he would weep and cry and weep. And on many, many occasions throughout his life, he would weep over Abu Abdullah. And for this reason, it has been blessed. The grieving of Abu Abdullah has been blessed with shafa'ah and has been blessed with erasing your sins and giving you great reward. And not just that, I believe that Abu Abdullah, he gave up everything for Islam, and there was no one to mourn for him. So in a way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, right, I will give you all the mourning that there is just for your cause.
That was the promise made to Sayyidina Fatima Zahra.
Definitely, it was made to her a very long time ago, before even the earth was created, that this was to happen, and that there would be a community and a group of people specifically created to mourn for her son.
And also, when you look in history, no such tragedy, they say that there's no day like yours, who's saying that.
Definitely.
There is no day that, no matter what grief people go through in personal lives, recently, I heard about an accident, 4 young men have been killed, but still, when you look at Karbala, nothing compares to that tragedy, and so the honour to shed those tears for him, in comparison to our, temporary lives here, it's just there's no competition there. And I think it's to remember the bigger picture, that actually that sacrifice for the sake of Allah, and all the tragedy they went through. So we've got a couple of minutes left now. Any final points you'd like to mention to our viewers?
Because just before you answer that, I think in the next episode, just for the benefit of our viewers as well, we'll actually take a deep dive into certain rituals that have sparked up some controversy, i.e., for example, the bloodletting and the walking on the fire, for example, and the zanjir. So just before you give your last points, just wanted to make that aware.
The last point,
to make our viewers aware.
The last point I wanted to discuss and then to also pass on to the viewers is that our Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq Shazi Hafidhullah has said that it is wajib to carry on the azadari, to protect the azadari, and to carry on, to make sure that these rituals of wearing black, of having majalis, of having the masa'ib, of crying for Abu Abdullah and the lamentation, may they continue, and it is our duty and obligation to preserve these rituals year after year after year. So please, brothers and sisters, go out there and do your bit in order to preserve these rituals and to carry forth the message of Abu Abdullah, inshallah.
Thank you so much. We've come to the end of this morning's segment and the show, actually. Thank you so much once again. And inshallah, as Brother Ali said, that we will talk about the other rituals in our next morning that we meet.
Inshallah.
Have a blessed day, inshallah.
Yeah, and with that, we've had a great morning show, looking at different poetry, the different scenes from Iraq as well as the Ma'asuma section. So it's been quite an intense episode. However, we're very much enjoying the time, and of course our guests as well. We thank them very much, specifically Sayyid Mohsen.
Thank you for having me.
Very much enlightening us when it comes to a jurisprudential aspect of the months of Muharram and Safar. So stay tuned for our next episode of Morning Baraka from us and today, myself and Zahra. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.